Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today I'm going to be doing the level 80 overview of Summoner. Initially, Summoner isn't the greatest caster at the moment, mainly because there is a lot of clunkiness involved with their rotation. There's a lot of things that you have to do that you wouldn't say are optimal to playing, but because of how some of Summoner's mechanics work, and also the problems with, for example, your two big summons, you do have to play it in a suboptimal way to get the maximum damage out of it at the moment. Now, the main reason why I'm not going to talk about certain mechanics that you have to do yourself to get these certain summons to work in the correct way is because very soon in patch 5.08, Summoner is going to get a very slight rework that is probably going to touch upon these problems and hopefully fix them, because the current Summoner is actually really cool and it's pretty fun to play. It's just that when it comes to maximizing your damage output, you are going to be a little bit scuffed when it comes to those certain mechanics. So I'm not going to touch upon them too much. If you do want to know more about them and the ways on how you have to overcome these shitty mechanics, I'll just call them, go over to the Balance Discord. There's somebody that wrote a really good guide on how the rotation completely flows, on how you have to optimize all of the different aspects of Summoner and how to overcome some of these clunky mechanics to get the maximum damage output out of Summoner. So with that out of the way, I hope they fix it, because if they do, Summoner is actually a really cool job. So whereas Black Mage and Red Mage more focus on doing straight up damage, Summoner's damage output comes from three different sources. First of all, we have our pets. Summoner has three different pets that they can choose from. We have Garuda for AoE damage, which is also a ranged attacker. We have Ifrit, which is more for single target damage, and he's also a melee attacker. And we have Titan, who doesn't really get used at all. Now, the main choice in between Garuda or Ifrit is going to be, if you're doing AoE damage, you take Garuda. If you take single target damage, you take Ifrit. But since Ifrit is a melee fighter, if the boss is moving around too much for Ifrit to keep up, it's sometimes better to use Garuda. But in general, I use Ifrit when it's single target, I use Garuda when it's AoE. Other than that, we also have two dots that last for half a minute. So you want to keep those two up at all times as well. And then last but not least, we have our spammable skills, which are our ruin skills. These skills also become stronger depending on how many dots are on the target, which is why it's really important to always keep your two dots up. Other than that, we also have our energy drain mechanic. The old Aether Flow got replaced by energy drain, so when you use energy drain, you get two Aether Flow stacks, and you can then use these two on two of your other skills, either Fester for single target damage, which also gets stronger the more dots are on the target, or Pain Flare for AoE. When we are AoEing, we also have Outburst, which is our spammable AoE attack, and we can also spread our dots to nearby targets using, what's it called again, Bane. So we can just put our dots on one target, use Bane to spread these dots to the other targets as well. So the general flow of Summoner is going to be applying your dots, going into Dreadworm Trance, which is your first trance ability. Once you exit Dreadworm Trance, you're able to summon Bahamut, which is your first big summon. Then you go into some kind of a cooldown phase where you're just spamming Ruin, using your energy drain, making sure that you spend your pet actions as well, through the usage of Eggy Assault 1 and 2. These will also give stacks for something else, but I'll talk about that in just a bit. Then you can go into your Fireburst Trance, which then also comes with summoning the Phoenix, which is the second big summon. And then you go again into a small cooldown phase until you start all over again with going into Dreadworm Trance. So it's pretty much going to be a mixture of keeping up your dots, then going into your first trance. After that trance is done, you can summon Bahamut, and you go into a small cooldown phase again, and then you can go into Firebird Trance, which coincides with summoning Phoenix. So when it comes to just feeling like a summoner, it's really in the right spot right now, because back in Stormblood you were only able to summon Bahamut once every 2 minutes, whereas it was mainly focused around your Dreadworm Trances and such, whereas right now it is just going from one summon to the next, and it feels a lot better. So let's take a closer look at all of these abilities that we have. So first of all, first thing you want to do when you enter battle is we're going to summon a pet. I'm going to take out Ifrit, who looks like a carbuncle, because you can glamour your pets. If I take out Garuda, it looks like a blue carbuncle. So we can do these things. These are called eggy glamours, so you can change that if you want to make them look like this instead of their normal selves. So first of all, our 2 dots. Now there's 2 ways that we can apply these dots. We can either just use our dots like this. When we do this, I'm going to refer to it as hard casting the dots. This one, Miasma 3, is a casted spell, whereas Bio 3 is an instant ability. But a better way to apply our dots is by using Tri-Disaster. When we use Tri-Disaster, we immediately apply both of our dots, as well as a 30-second Ruination buff, meaning that all of your Ruin spells, as well as Outburst, will deal more damage. When we use Bane, which is this thing, to spread our dots to other targets, the Ruination buff is also going to be spread. So if you want to do the most damage, you always want to try to use Tri-Disaster as much as possible to apply these 3 buffs. Now, you could say, well, your dots lost 30 seconds, Tri-Disaster is a 50-second cooldown. How are you going to be able to use Tri-Disaster the most to apply your dots? Well, that is because whenever we enter a trance, either Dreadworm trance or Firebird trance, our Tri-Disaster is going to be reset. So we can utilize that to apply our dots 3 times using Tri-Disaster and hard casting them once in our every 2-minute cycle. Now, as you can see, our pet is also attacking the boss, so I'm gonna apply Tri-Disaster, and then whilst this we can use stuff like Ruin 3, which is our spammable single target attack. We can use Outburst for AoE, which looks like this. Summoner, just like Scholar, also has Ruin 2, which is a instant ability, so this allows for movement and for weaving. But whenever we order our pet to attack using Eggy Assault 1 or Eggy Assault 2, you can see that we get further Ruin stacks. Now these further Ruin stacks stack up to a maximum of 4, and they allow us to use Ruin 4. Now Ruin 4 is basically the same as your Ruin 2, as it replaces the Ruin 2 button, so when I use my last stack right here, you'll see that the ability now transforms back into Ruin 2. So in general, you always want to be using Ruin 3, use your 2 pet actions to get yourself stacks of Ruin 4, and then when you want to weave, you want to use the Ruin 4 procs that you have, and try not to weave as long as you don't have those procs. Of course, there will probably be some situations where you'll need Ruin 2 for movement, or for when you don't have these procs. So of course you can just use Ruin 2 if you need to, but if you want to optimize it, you want to try and use Ruin 4 as much as possible when it comes to weaving. Now, other than this, we also have our Energy Drain. This is a ability, and when we use it, we get 2 stacks. Again, Fester is our single target ability, which does more damage if there are dots on the target. And then we have Pain Flare, which is our AoE ability. Fester looks like this, and then we have our Pain Flare. Back in Stormblood and Heavensward, this used to contribute into going into Dreadworm trance, so you needed to spend your Aetherflow abilities in order to get into Dreadworm trance. But right now it's just a standalone mechanic, there's nothing that interacts with this. So it's just use your Energy Drain and use your Festers during burst windows and stuff like that. So there's nothing too special about it. Now, the way you go into Dreadworm trance is now it's just a cooldown. So there's no special mechanic around it anymore, so you just press it and you're in Dreadworm trance. And then for the next 15 seconds, all of your cast abilities will have an instant cast. So this is really good for when you're gonna wanna weave a bunch of abilities as they have an instant cast. And then to finish Dreadworm trance, we have Death Flare. We only have this available during the Dreadworm trance, and when you use Death Flare, it will also stop your Dreadworm trance. So you want to use this when there's like 1 or 2 seconds left on the cooldown, or faster if you want to cancel out of Dreadworm trance sooner. Now, when I was using my pet, you can see that I also used a few other abilities. So we have our Eggy Assault 1 and 2, which have 2 charges, but we also have Aether Pact, which will make our pet use Devotion, which is our raid buff skill. If I'm not mistaken, this gives 5% DPS to everybody else. Let me go down here. Yes, it increases the damage dealt by everybody by 5% for 15 seconds. It's not much, but since we are a caster, casters usually aren't really associated with raid buffing too much, so 5% is still a pretty nice buff. And then we have our Enkindle, depending on which pet you have summoned. As you can see, this is going to change. Like now we have Aerial Blast for Garuda, we have Inferno when it is Ifrit, but it's basically the same, so this is kind of like your pet's ultimate ability. So when it comes to your normal pet, these two are the spammable skills, and then every 2 minutes you're going to use Aether Pact for the raid buff, and then Enkindle for their heavy hitting ability. Now, since we used our Dreadworm Trance, we are now locked out of using this. We can't use this anymore, because our gauge over here is transformed into our Bahamut gauge. Now, once you exit Dreadworm Trance, you get 2 stacks of Dreadworm Aether, which allow you to summon Bahamut. And when we summon Bahamut, the big boy comes out. I'm going to zoom out a bit because he is really big. And then when we use attacks on the enemy, Bahamut will attack as well, using Worm Waves. This can be any ability, can be hard cast, can be single cast. And when Bahamut is out, we can also use Enkindle on Bahamut to make him execute Akmorn. And then when the timer runs out, Bahamut disappears. Now, when Bahamut is gone, after you use him, your Dreadworm Trance will transform into Fireburst Trance. Again, this will also reset your Tri-Disaster, so we can use this to keep the Tri-Disaster buff going. But when we use it, there's also going to be 2 other things that change. So first of all, your Ruin 3 is going to change into, I believe it's called Fountain of Fire, and your Outburst is going to change into Purgatory, if I'm not mistaken. Might be wrong on the names. But those basically become a 1-2 combo with instant casts during your Fireburst Trance. Now, upon going into Fireburst Trance, you're also going to summon the Primal Phoenix, and you'll also be able to use Enkindle on your Phoenix to make him do his special attack. So, Fireburst Trance, 20 seconds, we summon our Phoenix. We can now use our Fountain of Fire, and it's Brand of Purgatory. So it's a 1-2 that we alternate in between, and then we can use Enkindle on the Phoenix to make him do his big attack. And then of course everything during this trance is instant cast as well, so it allows you to weave quite a bit. And those are all the abilities that Summoner has. It also has a Battle Rest, so it's really nice to take with you in a raid progression setting, as you have somebody else that can resurrect that players outside of just your healers. But outside of this, basic rotation goes as follows. You go into your Dreadworm Trance, you summon your Bahamut, you have some downtime, you summon your Phoenix, you have some downtime again, and then you go into your Dreadworm Trance again, starting the 2-minute cycle all over again. When it comes to your Tri-Disasters, you can use it to apply your dots at the start of the fight, after your Dreadworm Trance is ended, because you can reapply them with the Dreadworm Trance. Then somewhere in between your Bahamut and your Fireburst Trance, you're gonna have to manually reapply them. And then right before Fireburst Trance, you can use Tri-Disaster. After Fireburst Trance, you can use the reset of Tri-Disaster to reapply them again. And then you can use Tri-Disaster again right before you go into the Dreadworm Trance. But if you want to take a closer look at all of that, I recommend you go back to the beginning of the video, where I do this 2-minute rotation so that you can have a better idea of how it kind of all flows together. So that's it for me. That's kind of how Summoner works. It's a really cool job. I hope they fix some of its clunkiness, and then I really think it's going to be a great job to play. So with that being said, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.